Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm Clara Jones. If we haven't already met, I'm an author and small publisher committed to changing the world for the better through inclusive stories and practices. And today we are jumping on for my Authorvision Facebook Live series, where I interview the amazing and inspiring authors in my network to discuss the personal visions that have shaped our lives and careers. So if you're joining us, please like, comment, share below. Let us know that you're here. And today I'm talking to Angela. Yay!
Hello.
Yeah, so glad to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's jump right on in. What's your backstory? How did you get to where you are today?
Oh, gosh. Okay, we're going to dive right in then. My backstory. I was born in 1964 in San Francisco, and my parents, who were working class, lived in the Haight-Ashbury district. So if you can imagine, I was witness looking out my front window at Golden Gate Park to the Summer of Love.
Flower
But
child. Through
yeah, lots of colors and the energy of love over war, which is a good energy. But my home life was not all sunshine. So my father was an alcoholic, and he had a lot of self-rage that he projected onto his children. So as a youngster, I decided that anger and rage were something that no one should have to experience. So I made it not okay for me to feel anger, but I also judged everyone who felt anger. And that kind of bit me in the butt when I grew up and married a man who had an abusive childhood. But his childhood decision was that the loudest won. And so he used anger as a way to get what he wanted, and I judged it. So that was a toxic situation. And of course, while I was in it, I thought, well, he's the one doing things. I'm the innocent one. But of course, my judgment was adding to the energy.
Yeah.
So in 2017, a wildfire swept through Santa Rosa, California, and we lost our house that night. And that was the definitive moment in my life where over the next few months, I questioned everything, including, was this the life I wanted to live for the rest of my life? And there was just this visceral no.
Yeah.
So in the next 12 months, I left my marriage. 6 months later, I quit my government job.
Wow.
And 6 months later, I moved to England and lived there for a year. And that was, it's interesting because COVID started about 6 months after I got there. So then I'm like stuck in England for a little while. But it was a beautiful place to heal and start figuring out, understanding the dynamics of what went on. And one of the books I read was Alice Waters' The Body Never Lies. And for anyone who's familiar with her work, what she does is looks into childhood trauma and the long-term effects of it. And that really opened up my mind to all of what was going on in my marriage, but also helped me see why my father became the way he was.
Yeah. I mean, being a generational pattern breaker takes work.
It does. And the more of us who can choose to do that work and be the pattern breakers, not only do our children thrive because they're raised in a whole different way, but we thrive and the whole earth thrives a little bit better.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this is like, if people aren't given the opportunity to become those pattern breakers at an early enough age to catch themselves before they start having children themselves,
Oh, yes.
then it just delays the timeline for everyone involved, right?
It does. And, it's like there's so much there. It's not anyone's fault because, if you haven't woken up to certain truths, then you basically parent by default. And you either do it the way your parents did it because you feel you turned out okay, or you do it the opposite because you feel you didn't have the best parenting. And that parenting by default is part of that generational trauma pattern. And when we can make a conscious decision to look into our own reactivity and
Mhm.
see, oh my gosh, what's causing that? And then do the work to shift it, then we provide our children with so much more opportunity.
And it also has to do with this concept of like growth mindset as well,
Mhm.
because it's an ongoing practice. Like, even if you're 50, 60, 70 years old, like there's still work that you can do, and there's still ways that you can improve your family relationships, your relationships to others in a impactful way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, just because emotions were a big thing, I repressed emotions. My former husband expressed them largely, and I basically had to learn to accept that anger is an emotion that is natural, and accept that I don't want to say proper, but the positive expression of anger can be very beneficial.
Mm,
But not many of us were given the tools to know how
yeah.
to express in a way that doesn't hurt ourselves or others.
Yeah. I literally just read a post today that was talking about how, as parents, we have a responsibility to teach that to our children, because we take for granted these skill sets that we have as adults and assume that the children have those skill sets and knowledge sets as well. And like, whether it's expressing anger in healthy ways, or like how to differentiate between clean and dirty laundry. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, kids don't have that inherent knowledge set inside of them. You have to be like, this is how you like do the sniff test, like you separate them out. Like it's something that must be learned.
Yeah. And even though I mean, I really believe that the children who are alive on earth now are the ones who will bring heaven on earth.
Mm,
Um, and that's not meaning that they're going to do anything other than be self-aware
mm,
and have self-love,
mm,
because those two things are what creates a magical life. So this is why I write my children's books, to provide them with tools that maybe their parents don't even know about, so that, well, hopefully the parent reads the books to the kids so that they can be able to find an emotional equilibrium,
mm.
and then the children can be given that tool set. Because if we're self-aware enough about our own emotions, and we know the tools for dealing with our emotions, life circumstances don't happen to us, they
Mm,
happen for us.
mm. Yeah, I mean, it's all about how you react to it. Like,
Yeah.
I was in this conversation with a friend the other day where I was talking about how it can't all be good things that happen to us. Like we kind of have to have the bad things along with the good things in order to understand that the good things are good. Like
The contrast helps.
yeah, exactly. And it's an unreasonable expectation of us to have of like only good things can happen to us, or I only want good things to happen to us, when really there's a lot of depth and value when you take the bad things that happen and react to them intentionally instead of reacting to them knee jerk.
When crisis happen, like your house burns down, this is a seminal event that it was like I noticed the people in my neighborhood, because Santa Rosa, the community of Sonoma County, lost 5,000 homes in one night. So a lot of friends lost their home. And I could really see this delineation line. There were the people who wanted to rebuild exactly what they had in the exact neighborhood, so it would be exactly what they had. And then there are the ones who said, you know, maybe I should see where else in the world I might live. And I kind of put it together and I said, that event can either be the anchor that weighs you down because you're afraid of change.
Yeah.
Or it can be the springboard that launches you through another doorway. And it comes down to the fear of change. And that's one thing we're guaranteed in this life is change.
Right. Change is a constant. There's no escaping it.
There's no escaping it. It's going to happen. And so when you're investing your focus onto the fear of that, you're choosing into making yourself uncomfortable. And if you can choose, hey, I'm okay and I'll be okay, and open your heart to allowing things to happen, you're free of worry, you're free of anxiety. And it's like, I don't know, it's just, for me, it's a better way of being.
Yeah. I mean, it gives you more control too, right?
Yeah. And that's an interesting statement, because the dichotomy of allowing gives you more control.
Yeah.
And it's not that you need control, but it is that in allowing, you're allowing your life to unfold the way it's meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful sentiment. And you've talked a little bit about the visions that carried you through this, but talk a little bit more about what was your guiding compass, what was your guiding star throughout all of this?
Oh my gosh. I was really motivated to figure this all out. Why was I in that really butt heads relationship, and why couldn't I make it any better no matter how hard I tried? And that caused me to really look inside and to examine, what happened in my childhood and how did that affect how I look at the world? And how can I shift those energies from what happened in my childhood so that I'm no longer a victim of that? Because that stuff that happened in my childhood created victim mentality for me. And so it's one of the things that I frequently talk about on podcasts is, if you can picture a drunken, enraged father looming over a 4-year-old child and telling her she's not worth anything. as an adult person, I can look at that and say, oh my gosh, what's the real picture here? Because he's projecting his lack of self-worth onto her.
Yeah.
And she, on the other hand, because she's a child, she's looking at him as the authority. She's taking it as truth, but it's totally untrue because everything he said was about him, not about me. And so I can now, step into that picture and pick up that 4-year-old me and tell her the truth and tell her she doesn't have to feel like she's not worthy, that she isn't worth anything. She can know that this is all about him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a way to like escape from the victim mentality in a way of being like, do I want to fix this and be better, or do I just not want to be a victim anymore? Because there are a lot of vehicles to achieve that non-victimhood. Is like, you can turn it into like, I need to become the perpetrator now instead.
Well, no, that doesn't take you out of victim energy, actually, because the victim triangle is perpetrator, victim, and rescuer. So if you're in any of those 3 roles, you're still in victim energy. But for me, and this may resonate for some people and it may not, but for me, the way to step out of victimhood was, where do I take responsibility here? Because I can be responsible for how I reacted to what he did. I can't be responsible for what he did. And I can change how I react. I can't change how he acts. And so once you take responsibility, you have control. You're not a victim anymore.
And I think that that's a point that a lot of people miss, is that it's a victim system. It's not like an individual assigning of it. Like, you're either a victim or you're not a victim. It's like you're either working within a victim system or you're not working within a victim system. Absolutely.
And frequently you'll run through all 3 roles. So that I can explain that by talking about an argument with my ex-husband. And while he was screaming at me, I was the victim. And then I would take it and take it and take it until I reached that point that I couldn't anymore. So I would scream back at him. Now he's my victim and I'm the persecutor. I'd go to bed that night. The next morning I'd wake up and I'd think, oh, we should have done this, this, and this to fix that. Now I'm the rescuer. So I played all 3 roles in that one event.
Yeah, it's interesting how you have to just step outside the system in order to understand what's going on there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And the first thing that I took responsibility for was, why am I so reactive to his anger? And then I could look at my relationship with my father and say, well, no, duh. Oh, that's where that came from.
Yeah.
And then I could, just use timeline therapy, use other ways to just subtly shift that energy. And yeah, it's a process. It's like peeling an onion because there's so many layers. There's the things your dad said to you, or the things your mom said to you, and the way your school teacher treated you, or the clergy member, or whatever it is. There's many layers. And so as you slowly peel that onion, you finally get to the core of who you are.
I mean, we've already kind of started talking about this, but what lessons did you learn throughout this?
Well, the most important lesson was that feelings are information. Feelings are natural and all of them. And when we resist or reject a feeling, we're setting up a prison of our own making. Because that's what I did. That's what my father did. You know, he tried to numb his feelings of unworth with alcohol, and yet his behavior just prolonged that. And so he created that self-made prison. And I did with my judgment of anger. And fortunately, the fire caused me to start looking at all of these things and realizing that, hey, if I want a different life, I need to change.
It's funny that we're talking about this, because the last episode we did, we were talking about how emotional expression can often be a toxic habit to get into when you use it as a way to get attention. Like, you can only get attention when you're angry, you can only get attention when you're crying, you can only get attention when you're screaming, and that can become another toxic system that you get stuck in time and time and time again. And so there's a lot of nuance here that we're dealing with, is like how to self-express in healthy, productive ways versus self-expressing and acknowledging our emotions and weaponizing them, essentially.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that Alice Water talks about, or Alice Miller, I'm sorry. Alice Water is a Berkeley chef. I don't know why. It's lunchtime. So anyway, Alice Miller says that repressed feelings either turn inward into self-harming, into the body attacking itself, into disease, or they express outward into attacking others. And so we cannot repress or truly escape our emotions. They're going to come out. And so the healthy thing is to be able to face them and allow that energy to flow. And what I tell, what kids learn in my books is that the story of what happened, the story of your circumstances, is what prolongs the exposure to the feeling. So the more your mind is engaged, the longer you're gonna feel it. All those times when you think, it's not fair, he did that to me, I didn't want that to happen. Those loops keep you in that feeling. And so when you, what I call is focused attention on feeling. So something happens and a feeling comes up. All you do is notice the feeling. Pay attention to it. Describe it, its location, its intensity. Just take a minute to really notice that feeling. Name it. Now you're acknowledging the feeling. And the last step is to allow it. When you take that last step and you say, it's okay for me to feel this way, the energy can dissipate now. And so this technique can be used over and over and over again because it is that onion that we have to peel. And each time your mind is so focused on the feeling that it can't be thinking of the story. So that disconnect from the story means that the feeling can flow and it can go away.
I mean, for me, I also have problems with like rationalized feelings. Like, those are the ones that stick around the most for me, is like when I know that the feelings are valid, they're there and they're there for reasons. How do you disconnect from
the story?
Yeah.
So that focused attention can be used when you're feeling bad, when you're feeling good. what it's doing is becoming so self-aware about the feeling. And every feeling is actually valid. You're feeling it. So that story of that this is a rational feeling, I should feel this way, is actually one of those thoughts that's prolonging the exposure. Because if you disconnect the mind and just allow the feeling, the biochemistry of a feeling is 120 seconds. Think about people who grieve for years. It's like if with grief, we try and put on a good face and we try and say, I need to compartmentalize and I won't feel that right now. I need to show up and be at work. And if we can just take a moment to say, I'm feeling really sad. And it's okay. I understand why I'm feeling sad. That allows the energy to flow. And grief is a huge energy. So it's got to flow little by little. It's not like you can take one time and boom, it's gone. And it's really hard when there's more than one terrible thing that happened. And so it's give yourself grace is all I say, because we weren't trained from infant on to do that, and so it doesn't feel natural for us to do that. But once we can, then those feelings can start flowing.
I mean, this is a perfect segue into the last question of what practical tools did you use to support yourself during these times?
So the first tool I used was Ho'oponopono, which is the Hawaiian mantra of, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And you say that as you're thinking about someone that maybe you wronged them and they have feelings about that, or maybe you feel they wronged you. I did that for 3 months as I drove to and from work after I left my marriage but hadn't yet left my job. I just did it over and over and over. And what forgiveness does is it frees you from the burden of resentment. Because the other person, energy is energy. They may feel it, but they may not really be aware of what's happening. And so you're not hurting them when you are in resentment, you're hurting yourself. And so if you can let go of that resentment, and Ho'oponopono is a wonderful tool for that, then that frees you from that burden.
That's beautiful. Any other tools or strategies that you used?
I think the Ho'oponopono, the give yourself grace, and the focused awareness are 3 very powerful, really simple and seemingly innocuous tools that can truly change your life.
I love that. I love that. Well, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Just how much I appreciate you. You've been a wonderful host, and I have enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, I mean, we always dive into very powerful stuff in these episodes, and I always walk away like it's a mini therapy session. I'm like, oh yeah, that does make me think about my own life and my own experiences.
Maybe I should start a podcast.
Yeah, it's funny how these conversations really do take a shape of their own, but there are these underlying themes of powerful self-awareness and self-development and being armed with the self-knowledge as we move forward in our journeys.
Yeah. And once you do achieve that self-awareness, you realize that you don't need to be armed because you're so powerful that you created this whole thing. And yeah.
Well, this is powerful stuff. So audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and feelings and insights with us as well. We'd love to know how visions like these have shaped you in your own lives. So special thanks to Angela for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so please comment, like, subscribe below. Check out linktree/clairjoyance for all of my links. And then where can people find out more about you?
AngelaLegh.com, and it's AngelaLegh.com.
Awesome. And I'll make sure those links are in the descriptions and stuff for easy access. And until next time, please remember that you all have extraordinary stories inside of you, and I'm rooting for you as you use them to change the world for the better. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you later.